just below the syllabus tab here, you see course content where you will find the PowerPoint slides. Okay. So today's topic is the blood. Okay, so blood is a part of your cardiovascular system. Cardiovascular system consists of the heart, blood vessels, and the blood. So we all know that blood circulates inside the cardiovascular system, right? Blood is a fluid, and that fluid circulates inside the cardiovascular system. That means inside the heart and the blood vessels. And blood itself is a connective tissue. Okay? Blood is a connective tissue. Special type of connective tissue. Why? Because it is the only connective tissue which is in liquid form. Other connective tissues like your bones, cartilages, fats, those also belong to connective tissue, but they are in solid form, right? The blood is a special type of connective tissue that circulates within the heart and the blood vessels. Now, why blood is a connective tissue? The reason is all connective tissues come from a single source or origin that is called the mesenchymal tissue. One type of embryonic tissue, and all connective tissues come from the mesenchymal tissue. Your fats come from mesenchymal tissue. Your bones, cartilages come from mesenchymal tissue. That's why all those belong to connective tissue. Make sense? Blood also comes from the mesenchymal tissue. General properties of blood. What's the color of the blood? Red, right? Red. Arterial blood is bright red, and venous blood is dark red, like bluish. Okay? Why? Because in arterial blood, in case of systemic circulation, in arterial blood, you have more oxygen. Okay? And when oxygen binds with hemoglobin, it gives bright red color. Okay? Presence of carbon dioxide makes the blood dark red. But in general, we say blood is red because of hemoglobin in the blood. Hemoglobin is red pigment. pH of blood is between 7.35 and 7.45. That means above 7, right? Remember, pH 7 is neutral, okay? If it is above 7, it is alkaline. Below 7, it is what? Acidic. Make sense? So the pH of blood is 7.35 to 7.45. That means slightly what? Alkaline. Make sense? Okay. Now, if the pH of blood goes below 7.35, we will say that acidosis. has occurred. That means towards acidic, right? Blood is going towards acidic, right? Acidosis. So it is very important that pH is maintained within this range. Viscosity of blood is high, 4 to 5 times more than water. 4 to 5 times more than what? Water. That means viscosity indicates thickness and stickiness. So blood is much thicker and stickier than the water, 4 to 5 times. Temperature. Blood is slightly warmer than body temperature. Okay? So the temperature of blood is 38 degree Celsius. That means 100.4 degree Fahrenheit. Slightly warmer than the body. Volume. The total volume of blood in adult male is 5 to 6 liters and adult female 4 to 5 liters. That means in female body the total volume of blood is what? More or less than male? Less, right? Why? Because the whole surface area or the total surface area of male body is more than female, right? So male body has more blood vessels, as well as another thing is important, that in male body you have more muscles in general than female. Female body has more fat, and muscle tissue has more blood vessels than the fat. Make sense? So since male body has more muscles, more blood vessels, more blood, okay, than the female body. Two factors I said. One is the size is bigger, right? And number two, even if you measure the volume of blood in a male and female, both are same size. In male body has more blood because of muscle. Make sense?
Is it also because in the female body, like during their menstrual cycles, when you lose blood?
That blood loss is not a factor because you are drinking water and red blood cells are being continuously produced. Okay, so quickly replaces. So that's not related to volume. Okay, so those are general properties of blood. Functions of the blood. Now, one thing is very important to understand the function of the blood. Blood, I said, does what? Circulates, right? Continuously, even when you are sleeping, right? 24 hours throughout the life, blood is moving. Why blood moves? Why something moves? To transport, right? Moves to transport. So, transportation of chemicals is the main function of the blood, and that's why blood is always moving, to transport. Now, what are the things you need to transport? Just think, you take oxygen, right, into the lung from outside, and blood takes that oxygen from the lung and transports it to the tissue. Make sense? Because your tissue needs, what your tissue needs? Oxygen, right? And nutrients, you see? So those things must be transported, right? Blood takes oxygen from the lungs and transports oxygen to the tissue, gives the oxygen to the tissue. Make sense? Tissue produces what? Carbon dioxide, which should be expelled, right? So blood takes the carbon dioxide from the tissue and brings the carbon dioxide into the lung, and you expel it. Is it clear? So blood transports oxygen from the lung to the tissue and carbon dioxide from the tissue to the lung. Clear? Opposite direction. So transportation of those gases, number one. Number two, blood transport nutrients. From the food, right? Blood absorbs the nutrients in the intestine, right? And gives to the tissues, because tissue also needs nutrients. Blood transports hormones from the glands to the target organ. Make sense? Blood transports antibodies. Antibodies give what? Immunity. Okay? Blood transports toxic metabolic wastes. Most of them are given to the kidneys, you know. And kidneys do what? Produce urine and excrete them out from the body. Very important function, right? Blood collects the toxic metabolic wastes from the tissues and give to the kidneys. Kidneys excrete them. Make sense? So you see, all those things are being transported by the blood from one place to another. Is it clear? Make sense? Okay. So transportation of those things. Regulation of pH. What is the pH of blood? How many of you remember? 7.35 to 7.45, right? And I mentioned that pH must be maintained. If it drops, that becomes what? Acidosis, right? We don't want that. So, now the question is, who maintains the pH of blood? Blood itself has some buffers. Those are called blood buffers. Have you heard buffer? If you have taken chemistry, you must know buffer, right? Buffers maintain the pH unchanged. Okay? Maintain the pH. So, blood itself has few buffers, and that blood buffers maintains the pH between 7.35 to 7.45. What are the important blood buffers? One is called bicarbonate buffer. Another is called phosphate buffer. Protein buffer. So these are important blood buffers. They keep the pH within the range. Coagulation. Coagulation is blood clot formation of blood clot. And you know, when you get a cut, blood clots, right? To do what? To stop bleeding, right? Clot is formed to stop bleeding. So which is important, right? So blood has the ability to coagulate or form clot, which is helpful, right? To stop bleeding. Now you tell me, if blood clot is formed inside the blood vessel, is that helpful or harmful? Harmful, right? So coagulation is not always helpful. Coagulation is helpful when you get a cut to stop or seal that cut, right? Stop bleeding. But if coagulation occurs inside the blood vessel, that can block your artery and can kill it. Okay? So anyway, so coagulation helps, but if abnormal coagulation is formed, that is not helpful. Defense. Two components of your blood protects your body. One is antibodies, and another component of blood that protects your body, fight against the antigens, white blood cells. So antibodies and white blood cells are two important components in your blood that protects your body, provides immunity. Okay? stabilization of body temperature. Blood maintains the body temperature. How? Two ways. One is if body temperature increases, okay, your body temperature is mainly controlled by two ways. One is if body temperature increases, what happens? The blood vessels of your skin dilate. Make sense? So now you tell me, if the blood vessels in your skin dilate, more or less blood will flow in the skin? More. Make sense? So more blood will circulate in the body surface, right? And from the blood, heat will easily get out through the skin. Make sense? So that's how your blood helps to stabilize the body temperature. Another way body temperature is regulated, that is not related to blood, sweating. Right? If body temperature increases, sweating occurs, that water takes the heat out from the body. Make sense? So, by increasing the blood flow in the skin or body surface, your blood helps to release the heat out from the body. Make sense? Okay. Help in excretion, I already mentioned that toxic metabolic wastes are taken to the kidneys mainly and excreted through the urine. Which toxic chemicals get out through the urine? Ammonia, urea, those two things. And carbon dioxide gets out through the breathing. So blood brings the carbon dioxide into the lung and we expel the carbon dioxide out from the lung. So, composition of blood. Blood consists of two components or two parts, solid part and liquid part. So if you take blood in a test tube and put the blood in a centrifuge machine we have over there, that will spin, okay? So if you take blood in a test tube and centrifuge for a few minutes, what happens? You will see the blood cells, most of the blood cells are red blood cells. So you will see the blood cells settle in the bottom part of the test tube, go to the bottom part of the test tube. And these are all red blood cells, and white blood cells and platelets are less in number compared to the red blood cells. So you'll see red blood cells for most part of it, and white blood cells and platelets are here. Okay, thin layer. So these are red blood cells. Here you have white blood cells and platelets. Okay, and this part is the liquid part. This is called the plasma. Okay, so plasma is the liquid part that will go to the top, and blood cells are called the formed elements. Formed elements will go to the bottom if you centrifuge the blood for a few minutes. All blood cells will go to the bottom and the liquid part will go to the top. And the bottom part is the formed elements and top part is what? The plasma. Make sense? And in normal blood, these are two components, and plasma is about 55% of total volume. So if this amount is 155 milliliter, if whole blood is 100 milliliter, 55 milliliter will be the plasma and 45 milliliter will be the formed elements. So in the whole blood, plasma volume is little bit more than the formed elements or blood cells. Is it clear? 55% is the liquid part plasma and 45% is the formed elements or blood cells. And this percentile of formed elements in the blood is called hematocrit. Hematocrit. The volume, percent volume of formed elements, which is about 45%. So hematocrit value is 45% in normal blood. Make sense? That means your blood cells give 45% of volume of blood. Now, if I ask you, this hematocrit value is mostly given by which type of blood cells? Red blood cells. Make sense? Most part, about 99% of it is given by the red blood cells, because in your blood, if you just count in 1 microliter, very small amount of blood, you have millions of red blood cells, and the white blood cells are thousands, few thousands. Okay, so like 100 times more than white blood cells. Red blood cell count is 100 times more than white blood cells. That's why this hematocrit, 99% or more is given by the red blood cells. So that's why in some textbook you will see what is hematocrit value? It is the percentile volume of red blood cell. But actually, I would say that percentile volume of the blood cells, all kinds. Okay, but the difference is very little, right? Volume of red blood cell and the all blood cells, the difference is less than 1%, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so now, if you see the liquid part, plasma, you have water in it, mostly water, about 92% volume of plasma is water. Proteins, those are called plasma proteins. Proteins in the plasma gives about 7% volume, and other chemicals 1%. Okay. So in the plasma you have water 92%, proteins 7%. So these proteins are called the plasma proteins because they are in the plasma. Now, what are the plasma proteins? 3 plasma proteins are the important plasma proteins: albumins, globulins, and fibrinogens, or fibrinogens, whatever you say. So, albumins, globulins, and fibrinogens. Those are 3 main plasma proteins. Okay. Now, I will mention 1 or 2 important functions of those 3 plasma proteins. Albumins are mainly responsible for colloid osmotic pressure. Colloid osmotic pressure is given mainly by the albumins, this type of plasma protein. What is this? What is colloid osmotic pressure? Also called colloidal osmotic pressure. What is that? This is the blood vessel, and blood flows through the blood vessel like this, and this pressure, colloidal osmotic pressure, keeps the blood towards the center of the blood vessel, prevents outwards pressure. So prevents the pressure towards the wall. Make sense? So blood will not move towards the wall. Instead, blood will try to stay in the center of the blood vessel, right? So that is helpful, right? To keep the blood in flow. If the blood tries to get out, that's not helpful, right? So blood should stay inside the blood vessel and quickly move through it, right? So that colored osmotic pressure keeps everything towards what? The center of the blood vessel. And that enhances the flow or prevents outward movements. Now you tell me, if in someone's blood the plasma protein albumin volume goes down, production is very low, albumin is very low, then this colloidal osmotic pressure will be low. Make sense? So blood will tend to do what? Get out from the blood vessel. Make sense? And that happens, in liver cirrhosis. Liver produces albumin, plasma protein. So if your liver is not functioning, example liver cirrhosis, then albumin will not be produced. So blood will tend to get out from the blood vessel, right? And that fluid, plasma, plenty of plasma will get out from the blood and will accumulate in the abdomen. That is called what? Ascites. Have you heard that? Accumulation of fluid. That happens in late stage of liver cirrhosis because of lack of what? Albumins, right? So the liquid blood will come out. So that is albumin. Globulins are mainly responsible for immunity. So globulins are responsible for immunity. Globulin is also called immunoglobulin. Why? Because it gives immunity. That's why this type of globulin in the plasma is called immunoglobulin. Destroy the antigens. Okay? And immunoglobulins are actually antibodies. Remember I said antibodies and white blood cells give immunity, defensive function, so immunoglobulins are antibodies. Fibrinogens or fibrinogens. This type of plasma protein helps in blood clot formation or coagulation. Okay? So those are the three types of plasma proteins and their important functions. Plasma proteins also help in transport the chemicals. So that is another function, but just remember those are the important functions. Here you see the same thing that I explained to you. This is the blood, and if we centrifuge, we can separate two components. Plasma is the liquid part and formed elements, the blood cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, right? Which type of blood cell is much more higher in number? Red blood cells, okay? Okay, so you see here, these are the red blood cells. These are 5 different types of white blood cells. We have neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, lymphocyte, monocyte. You just know that there are 5 different types of white blood cells. Give immunity. Red blood cells are mainly responsible for oxygen transport. White blood cells are mainly responsible for immunity. Okay? And platelets are mainly responsible for clot formation, coagulation. I'm repeating again. red blood cells are mainly responsible for transport of oxygen.
And nutrients.
Yeah. And white blood cells are mainly responsible for immunity. They can engulf the virus or bacteria or microorganisms, okay, and destroy them. And platelets are mainly responsible for what? Clot formation. Is it clear? Okay, now you tell me from my lecture, you got two components in your blood. Those are responsible for clot formation. One is platelets, right? These are blood cells. Another is plasma protein. Which one? Fibrinogen. So, if I ask you which two components of your blood are responsible for blood clot formation, which type of blood cells? Platelets. Which type of plasma proteins? Fibrinogens. Okay. Now, two components of your blood are responsible for immunity. Which type of blood cells? White blood cells. Which type of plasma proteins? Globules. Okay. So they are providing immunity. Okay. So here I have already explained that hematocrit, right? Hematocrit value is more in male than female because in male blood you have more red blood cells compared to female blood. Okay, so the number of or count of red blood cell is higher in male blood than the female. Okay, why? One is which tissue needs more oxygen? Muscle needs more oxygen, right? So to provide more oxygen, in male body has more muscles, right? So to provide more oxygen, you need more red blood cells because they transport the oxygen. Remember that? So if your body needs more oxygen, the number of red blood cells will be higher. Okay? Number one. Number two, a chemical that is called testosterone. Have you heard that? You heard that, right? The male sex hormone. Testosterone stimulates the bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. Directly stimulates the bone marrow. Okay? So that is another reason in male body you have testosterone that stimulates the production of what? Red blood cells. Okay? Another chemical that is produced in the kidney that is called renal erythropoietin. We'll talk about that, just know that. Renal erythropoietin. That also stimulates the production of red blood cells. Anyway, so why in male body more? Because of more muscles, more metabolism, more requirement of oxygen, the red blood cell count is more. Number two, testosterone. Origin of plasma proteins. From where these plasma proteins come? The synthesis of plasma protein mainly occurs in the liver that I mentioned, right? You remember the liver cirrhosis will, cause decreased amount of albumin. So liver produces more than 90% of plasma proteins. Small amount of antibodies, that means the globules. You remember globules are antibodies. Small amount is produced by the plasma cells, one type of cells in the blood. And some plasma proteins come from endocrine glands, but mostly from the liver. Just remember that liver is the main source of plasma protein. Okay? We have talked about three types of plasma proteins. Now, three types of blood cells are red blood cells, also called erythrocytes. Erythro indicates red colored, erythrocyte means cell. So red colored cell, make sense? Erythrocytes, red blood cells, or RBC. White blood cells are also called leukocytes. And platelets are also called thrombocytes. thrombocytes or platelets. Okay? So erythrocytes or red blood cells, leukocytes or white blood cells, thrombocytes or platelets. Now we will talk about the red blood cells. Red blood cells are red. Why? Because inside the red blood cell you have that pigment. What is the name of that red pigment? Hemoglobin. Remember that? Hemoglobin is red colored pigment. And that's why the red blood cells are red. Make sense? Because of hemoglobin. And hemoglobin binds and transports oxygen. Okay. Red blood cells are anucleated. That means absence of nucleus. No nucleus inside the mature red blood cell. So if you see inside the mature red blood cell, no nucleus. Instead, you have hemoglobin inside. So just know that mature red blood cells are anucleated. Absence of nucleus. Make sense? But you have what? Hemoglobin inside. Immature red blood cells, if you see, immature red blood cells, they have nucleus, no hemoglobin inside. Now you tell me, this is immature. I said it has what? Nucleus inside, but no hemoglobin. Make sense? And this is mature red blood cell. You have no nucleus, but you have what? Hemoglobin. Now you tell me, from immature to become mature, what are the changes you should see? Disappearance of what? Nucleus disappearance, right? And appearance of hemoglobin. Make sense? This one has nucleus, no hemoglobin. The mature one has no nucleus, but hemoglobin. Make sense? So from here to here, to go from here to here, changes should be like what? Disappearance of nucleus, appearance of hemoglobin, right? Another thing happens when immature becomes mature, like when we get old, what happens? The size, it's smaller, right? So immature red blood cell is bigger, but mature red blood cell is smaller in size. So reduction of the size, right? Another change. So if I ask you 3 important changes that occurs during the maturation of red blood cell, what are those 3 changes? Disappearance of the nucleus, appearance of hemoglobin, and the cell size gets smaller, decreases, or reduction of cell size. Okay. So now we know that mature red blood cell does not have a nucleus. So since mature red blood cell doesn't have nucleus, the cell is not spherical. Cell is what? Flat. Round but flat. No nucleus inside, right? If nucleus is there, then it will be more like spherical. Make sense? So it is flat like a donut. So round but flat, and the outer part is thick and inner part is thin, like a thin membrane. In the donut you have a hole here most of the time, but here in case of red blood cell you have a thin membrane and outer part is thick like a donut. Okay? And if you look from the side, it will be like this. Since it is flat, so the center part is thin, outer part is thick, like this. Okay? And this is the hemoglobin inside. This is the hemoglobin, no nucleus. That's why it is flat. Now, because of the flatness of the red blood cell, there are a couple of advantages. What are those? You see, hemoglobin binds with oxygen. We know that, right? And transports oxygen. Since the red blood cell is flat, you see the cell membrane. This is the cell membrane. And the hemoglobin are very close to each other. Make sense? Very close to each other. Like hemoglobin is attached to the cell membrane because it is flat. And that helps in binding and releasing the oxygen. So quickly oxygen can get out from the cell or get in and bind with hemoglobin. Make sense? It's not far from the cell membrane. It's just next to the cell membrane, right? If it was spherical like a soccer ball and hemoglobin is in the center, then from the membrane, oxygen has to travel through the cytoplasm. Make sense? So to quickly bind and get out, that is helped by the flatness of the red blood cell. If it was like, round like this is hemoglobin here, then oxygen has to travel this way, get out this way. Okay? But this is helpful. Number 2, because of the flatness of the red blood cell, when it tries to pass through narrow capillaries, flat red blood cells can easily get folded and pass through the narrow capillary. Flat things can get easily, folded, right? If it is like a soccer ball, spherical, air-filled soccer ball, can you fold it? No. But if you take the air out and make it flat, you can fold it, right? At least squeeze it easily. So red blood cells can easily pass through the narrow capillaries because of the flatness of it. So those two things are helped by the shape of the red blood cell. Here you see these are the red blood cells under the microscope. This is the cut of a red blood cell. Its outer part is thick, inner part is thin. Okay, and red blood cells often form columns or stack together, like dinner plates. When you go to a big party, you see the dinner plates are piled together. So since the red blood cells are round, flat, like dinner plates, when they pass through capillaries, they get attached to each other like this and form columns. So that column is called rouleau. So rouleau formation is a property of red blood cells. Okay? Here, see many red blood cells are stuck together. Make sense? Okay. That's a property. Count of red blood cell. I mentioned before, in 1 microliter you have millions, not thousands. So, in adult male, in 1 microliter, a very small amount of blood, if you count, you have 4.5 to 6.3 million red blood cells. In female, red blood cell is less, right? Count is less. In 1 microliter, the count is, normal count, in adult female is 4.2 to 5.5 million. And you already know why the red blood cell count is more in male, right? 2 things you mentioned: muscle, more muscles need more metabolism and oxygen. Number 2, testosterone, that hormone, right? Stimulates the production of red blood cells. Remember, the body that needs more needs more metabolism, the red blood cell count will be more because oxygen transportation should be more, right? Oxygen is required for metabolism. You know that. Now you tell me. You all know when you do exercise, right? Metabolism increases, right? So that's why blood circulation increases, to give more oxygen to the tissue. Now you tell me, growing kids have more metabolism or less in the body?
More.
More, right? That's why you see they get hungry quickly, right? And because their body is growing, metabolism is more, right? So they need more oxygen transportation in the body. So in children, the red blood cell count is very high compared to adults. Makes sense, right? Body is growing, its demand is more, oxygen demand, metabolism is high. So children has more red blood cells than adults. Production of the blood cells. All blood cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, come from one type of stem cells. Those are called hemocytoblasts. So hemocytoblasts are the stem cells for all types of blood cells. So